A good sequel will usually up the scale of the first, expand on the existing world, and continue an ongoing story in a satisfying way. All of those ingredients are hard enough to squeeze into a single movie, and a sequel with all of those elements still might not be better than its predecessor. So what makes a sequel better than the original? For a sequel to be better than the original, it needs all the ingredients of a good sequel that I just mentioned, and then some. It's got to outdo the original movie, or redefine the series, or have a noticeable impact on the landscape of cinema as we know it. Of course, this is all opinion, so get down in the comments and sound off with which sequels you like more than the original. And keep watching this to see if we hit on any that you mentioned, because right now, we're laying out the top 10 sequels that are better than the original. Number 10, Aliens.
Get away from her, you bitch!
The first Alien movie is a deeply disturbing horror movie about heady ideas like body autonomy, corporate greed, and otherworldly evil. I'll be the first to say that following up a horror movie as good as this one is pretty much impossible because the more we see horror, the less scary it is. Director James Cameron knew that too, so he didn't bother making a horror movie for the sequel. Aliens is a genius follow-up. The title alone is brilliant because it basically just says, same thing, but more. Is Aliens objectively better than Alien? That's really hard to say because they're just so different, but that's just it. Aliens is so good that it completely shifted what people expected from this series. It shifted expectations for sci-fi movies, action movies, and any kind of sequel for that matter. So that's why it deserves some credit on this list. Number 9, Thor Ragnarok.
He's a friend from work!
Let's face it, if it wasn't for the fact that he's part of the MCU, the first Thor movie probably wouldn't have earned a sequel. For the longest time, Thor movies were the black sheep of an otherwise massively successful franchise. That is, until Taika Waititi got his hands on the character. Thor Ragnarok sheds the tonal clash of Shakespeare plus aliens in favor of a colorful hair metal aesthetic with a design philosophy heavily inspired by the comics work of Jack Kirby. Unlike previous Thor movies, Thor Ragnarok is hilarious, adventurous, and exciting. It set a new status quo for the character and paired him up with a cast of characters that audiences immediately fell in love with. It's not just the best Thor movie, it's easily among the best superhero movies. Speaking of the best superhero movies, number 8, Spider-Man 2.
Pizza time.
Before the MCU, before any CU, we had Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It's a little corny and dated, but its colorful palette and silly attitude no doubt had an influence on the MCU. Never forget how much leather superheroes had to wear in movies before Raimi's Spider-Man. The follow-up, Spider-Man 2, isn't just a great sequel, it's a perfect movie. It ups the scale of the first in every way, and without the baggage of telling an origin story, it's able to fully dive into the philosophy and psychology of what makes Peter Parker a hero. It's hard to believe that this movie is almost 20 years old because Spider-Man 2 holds up like the day it came out. Sure, there isn't an army of invaders or a big laser in the sky, but it still manages to feel like Spider-Man's whole world is at stake. Number 7, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Apes win war! Apes together, strong!
Rise of the Planet of the Apes was solid, but nothing special considering it really was just a soft reboot slash prequel to an existing franchise. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes took what the first set up and arguably outdid every other Apes movie that came before it. Between the groundbreaking effects, a nuanced, tension-filled story, and a fantastic villain, Dawn reinvigorated the Apes franchise. So the first one had largely uninteresting human characters? Okay, then how about a sequel where large chunks of the movie are about the politics of an early ape civilization? Not only that, a well-motivated and interesting conflict with a group of humans trying to rebuild what they've lost. This is sci-fi action done right. Sci-fi action at its best, however, goes to number 6, T2.
Hasta la vista, baby.
The first Terminator was a classic sci-fi horror movie, and in classic James Cameron fashion, he followed up a sci-fi horror movie with a sci-fi action classic. T2 completely subverted all expectations of the Terminator by having Arnie's T-800 in the role of protector against an even more unstoppable robot from the future. That's a character choice that would ripple throughout the following Terminator movies as well. The liquid metal Terminator is one of the scariest villains of all time, and the visual effects that enabled his look changed the VFX game forever. For years after this movie's release, producers were pointing to the liquid Terminator and saying, we have to do that. After T2, the stakes were raised and the frontiers of movies forever changed. Number 5, The Dark Knight.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
You knew this one was coming sooner or later. what's there to say about The Dark Knight that hasn't already been said 1,000 times before? It's been 13 years since this movie came out, and studios are still desperate to make a villain that evokes the unhinged performance that Heath Ledger pulled off here. This movie took the film industry by storm and has proven to be irreplicable, and Hollywood has tried damn hard to replicate it ever since it came out. It proved that superhero movies can be taken seriously, but it still manages to stay fun and action-packed. Number 4, Mad Max Fury Road. I still can't believe that George Miller could come back to this franchise after 30 years and make one of the greatest action movies of all time. It's a full-throttle, unrelenting force of a movie, fueled by a powerful story that's backed up with brilliant action set pieces. Fury Road is one of those movies that action filmmakers will be studying for years to come because its story is seamlessly merged with the action. The Mad Max movies, especially Road Warrior, were already considered some of the best action movies of all time, but after Fury Road, they're genuinely hard to go back to. Hell, most action movies feel like they're missing something when compared to Fury Road. Number 3, Evil Dead 2.
Groovy.
Sam Raimi made the first Evil Dead as a low-budget horror movie to get his foot in the door of the film industry. Its dynamic directing style and gross-out effects garnered a cult following. Evil Dead 2 could have been more of the same on a bigger budget, but Sam Raimi had more up his sleeve. Evil Dead 2 defines the series more than any other, as it took the elements of the first and added a slapstick, darkly comedic lens into the mix. In a lot of ways, Evil Dead 2 is like a soft reboot of the first, as it goes over much of the same material in its first act. But after that, Evil Dead 2 goes completely off the rails in the best way possible. Every Evil Dead property since has followed suit, and a generation of filmmakers grew up wanting to evoke the same level of humor and horror. Number 2, The Godfather Part 2.
Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
How many tragic dramas do you know of that got a sequel? Let alone a sequel this good. The first Godfather is a beautiful slow burn about the cost of ascension in the criminal world. The sequel, naturally, is the fall of the family under Michael Corleone. There's a beautiful symmetry to the first and second Godfather movies, but the second especially hammers home the tragedy of it all. The parallels between father and son, in the past and in the present, shine a new light on the first Godfather without taking anything away from the original. And the number 1 sequel that's better than the original is Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. I'm just kidding, please do not come for me. No, let's be real. The best sequel that's better than the original is Empire Strikes Back. You saw it coming. The first Star Wars movie is amazing, and for audiences, it was pretty much a big budget throwback to Flash Gordon serials. Judging it through the lens of what audiences expected at the time, Empire was subversive as hell, and its twist ending left die-hard fans infuriated. Despite the rage, history still looks back on Empire as the movie that best encompasses the space opera of Star Wars. The highs and lows of this film will probably never be repeated, but fans will never give up hope that one day we'll get another Empire. Every time a Star Wars movie comes out now, fans are always like, yeah, it's good, but it's no Empire. What do you think? We definitely did not get to everything with this list, so I'm sure you can help add to it or rearrange it in the comments below.